Hi, AJ Hartley here, novelist, Shakespeare professor, fan of many things, but I want to focus on the first thing today, novelist. And what I want to talk about is a time when I quit. This was 11 years ago, February of 2014. And I want to talk about what drove me to stopping and how hard it was to stop, and what happened afterwards, which moves me to where I am today, and then offer some thoughts about the condition of being a writer and when people want to give up and why. So I figured that the easiest thing to do would be to simply read you the letter. This was something that I wrote initially to myself, and then I shared it with my family, and I sent it to my agent and told her that I was going to put it on my website as a kind of formal announcement. I'll read you the letter, and then you can hear what happens thereafter. I will warn you now that the letter has some strong language in it, because that's how I was feeling at the time, and that's why I want to include it, because, as I say, it came out of a period of intense frustration and disappointment and self-doubt, and also anxiety about who I was if I wasn't a writer anymore. So here's the letter. February 14th, 2014. I quit. I'm saying it to see how it feels, and because I am or was a writer, saying means writing it. So there it is. I'm testing it out, because being a writer isn't a job or a hobby, it's a sense of self. And to not be a writer anymore means I am no longer the person I was. This will take some getting used to, and not only because I have a public identity as a writer, which will take time to fade. Or maybe not, and thereby hangs a tale. First, the reasons. My third middle grades book came out last year, but no one noticed because the series was already effectively dead. Hamlet, a novel, my co-written follow-up to Macbeth, a novel, has yet to be released on audio, but I'm already being told there's no market for a print edition. In the last couple of years, I've written 2 complete novels, which I was unable to sell, and 2 other fully fleshed out pitches, one with the first 125 pages already written, which have attracted no attention either. Each of these projects was months of work, which went precisely nowhere. I point no fingers. I could rant about all that is wrong with traditional publishing, and particularly the failure to support what we used to call the mid-list in terms of publicity, or the diverting of resources to only the surefire hits. And I could rant about the chimera of self-publishing, in which for the most part hardly anybody makes much of anything. But what would be the point? Seriously, what would be the fucking point? In the end, none of it much matters. What's clear is that my work is not particularly valued or respected, and my prior track record in terms of sales actually counts against me getting new work off the ground. I have a day job, a good one, which pays well and which I enjoy much of the time. I don't need to be a novelist for financial reasons. I do it because I enjoy it, and because it is, or so I thought, fundamentally and inextricably who I am. That's who I always wanted to be, and what I worked towards for 30 years. But maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's a delusion that is keeping me from doing all the other things people do in their free time, whatever the fuck that is. I don't have free time. I have writing time and time when I think about writing. Given my track record of late, this looks absurd, as I am acutely aware, but it's true nonetheless. So stopping will be hard. It will test and refashion who I am, and frankly, the change scares and saddens me beyond words, which for me is saying something. But then so does this current half-life, this constant nothing where I pour heart, soul, and most importantly, time into something I cannot turn into anything anyone else cares about, and I am just fucking done. It feels like failure because I guess it is. But since I don't seem to be able to do anything about that, it's time to embrace the idea as a way of moving past it. So, what comes next? I don't know. Dungeons and Dragons and model railways? Maybe. No stupider and less obviously productive than what I've been doing for the last 30 years. But I had to hear it said, so here it is. I'm not a writer anymore. There. I said it. And the world didn't end. It's hard to read this now, 11 years on, and a lot of the sentiment there is still true. So the short version of what happened hereafter. So as I say, I sent it to my agent, and she said, don't put it on your website. I respect the impulse, but sit on it. Once you put it out there, you can't take it back. So don't make it public. So I didn't. But I quit. Effectively, I stopped writing. As I said, that was February of 2014, and I did nothing for 6 months. And then a number of things happened. One of the things that happened was that my agent contacted me and said, I've had this call from this guy, Tom DeLonge of Blink-182, and he's looking for somebody to partner on a project that he's calling Secret Machines. Are you interested? And obviously I said, sure. Tom and I talked for a while, and we hit it off, and we came up with some ideas for what that project would be. And, 11 years on, we've already done 5 novels, 2 Secret Machines, 2 Cathedrals of Glass, Trinity. We have another book coming out next year. The Secret Machines and Cathedrals series have yet to be finished, but they will be eventually. And there's potentially more stuff in the pipeline as well. So that partnership alone rejuvenated my career. At the same time, however, one of the books that I'd had on submission for months was eventually picked up by Tor. That became the first of the Steeplejack books. Those, books were extremely well reviewed. They're currently in development for TV, as are some of the stuff that I'm doing with Tom. And one of the other book that I mentioned there that had been submitted and hadn't sold to a UK press, that was called Bath Street, the following year, I think. And the Hamlet book that I mentioned did extremely well on Audible. It actually won the Audio Book of the Year, and was, really, really well reviewed. On top of those books, I published, another 10 in the last 10 years. I think I've done about 17 books since I quit. I've done about 17 books. I've had, Amazon bestsellers. Absolute number 1 Amazon bestsellers. I've sold, several 100,000 books that did not exist when I wrote that letter. By any measure, this has been a very successful career to date. Something which at the time that I wrote that letter, I had abandoned as a possibility. But I'm not offering this simply as a kind of rags to riches, aren't I great, isn't this cool? Because I don't know. These things happened without a lot of rhyme or reason. Of course, I'm writing the books, and hopefully the quality of the books makes a difference. But success is not something that you control. It happens to you a lot of the time. There are things you can do to accelerate the process to a certain extent, but it's not something that you can claim credit for. The idea that the cream rises to the top has always been bullshit, I think. And a lot of the things that I complain about in that letter are still true, are in some ways even truer today, as the market has got even tighter, even more constrained, even more driven by profit for a very, very few number of titles. The number of authors who make a lot of money doing this is very, very small as a percentage of the whole. So I'm not simply saying, don't stop. If you're a writer, and you're experiencing the feelings that I articulate in that letter, just keep going and everything will be fine. I'm not saying that at all. I know how lucky I have been. What I guess I am saying, and I think I feel this acutely at the moment because the world really feels like it's burning, or at least my corner of it. And a part of me thinks this is not the time to quit. This is not the time to stop, because we need authentic authors, artists of any kind, articulating their values, telling their stories. And there's an audience for that environment, you know. But I also recognize that, as I say, those feelings haven't gone away. I wrestle with this all the time, no matter how successful I am from moment to moment. And it is moment to moment. These things fluctuate massively. You're only ever as good as your last book. And by good, I don't mean the quality of the book. I mean how well it sold. So I totally understand. I talk to writers all the time, whenever we're at conventions and things, and everybody says the same stuff. Everybody is, no matter how successful they seem to be, they're all rehearsing their frustrations with the industry and how they can't reach the size of the audience that they want to or whatever. And a lot of people are constantly thinking about quitting, about stopping entirely. And here's what I would say based on my experience. You know, maybe that's not a bad thing. For all the value of telling your story and trying to reach your audience, you have to protect yourself. You have to protect your own sanity, your own mental health. And if right now it feels like it's too much, if it feels like it's taking too much out of you and you are not getting enough back of whatever it is, and I'm not simply talking about money or readerships, whatever satisfaction you get out of writing, if you're not getting it right now, then maybe stopping is not a bad thing. But what I would say is don't lock the door behind you. Leave it cracked a little bit. Because in a month, in 6 months, in a year, you might want to open it again. Other people might want you to open it again. You never know what opportunities are going to come your way. You never know what of your backlist is going to get discovered by people who'd never seen it before. And the hard thing about being a writer is that nobody appreciates your stuff until it's long done. When you're working on it, it can be incredibly lonely and isolating, and you're plugging away at something that nobody knows anything about until it's finished and available and out in the world. And only then do readers start saying, wow, this is great. And they sometimes reach out to you and say, oh, I really loved that book. And you're like, I barely remember it. You know, by the time you're reading it, I've been done with it for a year. I've moved on to something else, or I haven't. I've stopped, right? So what I would say is just leave the door open a little. Keep it cracked so that you can go back, you can open it. Because other people might want you to. They might not even know it yet, but they might be glad of it if you do. I guess that's all I have to say. As ever, please like, comment, subscribe, check out my books. Of course, check out my books. Check out my Patreon page. This channel is not monetized, as I always say, so my patrons are the only ones who actually keep it going. And I have a little dashery store for shirts and mugs and things like that. And I will talk to you soon. Thanks. And if you're a writer, don't stop completely. We still need to hear from you. Thanks. Bye.